Good morning, brethren, and welcome to our live program entitled A Glance at the Word, which is broadcast every Monday and every Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. West Africa time, which is GMT +1. On this Wednesday, the 11th of November 2020, we are continuing with our topic entitled David, a Man After God's Heart. Because of the technical issues that we had on Monday and which prevented us from delivering the message smoothly, we are going to deliver exactly the same teaching that we had on Monday. In the past sessions of our topic, we spoke of the positive qualities that were in the life of David before he sat on the throne of Israel. Then, in the very last part, that is last Wednesday last week, we started talking of David's wrongs or David's negative qualities. We saw what a big liar David turned to be. And we saw how he even involved his best friend Jonathan in his lies. We saw how he pushed Jonathan to sin for him. And among other things, we stressed on the fact that there is no such thing as a white lie. A lie is a lie. And any lie is a mass destruction weapon that Satan uses to harm or to quieten anybody who hinders his devilish plans. We saw how David's lies led to the death of 85 priests of the Lord who were in the town of Nob. We saw how those lies also led to the death of a great number of innocent inhabitants of Nob, besides those 85 priests of the Lord, which clearly shows that a lie is a mass destruction weapon in the hands of the devil. You know, the devil has no compassion. He counts it a pleasure to kill, to destroy. Thus, he doesn't count it a problem at all to destroy a whole town just to kill one person. Remember that this is actually what he did in Bethlehem when he wanted to kill the child Jesus after his birth. You remember, Herod commanded to kill all the children up to 2 years of age, hoping to have Jesus killed among them. And this is exactly what Saul did in Nob. He commanded to kill not only the 85 priests of the Lord, but also all the other inhabitants of Nob. Anyway, we saw how David turned out to be a liar and how that caused the death of a great number of innocent people. Let's now read 1 Samuel. Please, can you bring me my Bible? We're going to read 1 Samuel chapter 21, verses 10 to 15. 1 Samuel chapter 21, verses 10 to 15. So this is the first passage or the first scripture that we're going to read today. 1 Samuel chapter 21, verses 10 to 11. Then David arose and fled that day from before Saul and went to Achish the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said to him, "Is this not David the king of the land? Did they not sing of him to one another in dances, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? Now David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them, pretended madness in their hands, scratched on the doors of the gate, and let his saliva fall down on his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, Look, you see the man is insane. Why have you brought him to me? Have I need of madmen that you have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? So besides being a liar, David also turned out to be crafty. He turned out to be wily. So David appeared to be highly skilled in deceiving other people. In other words, David turned out to be a skillful deceiver. Every time that we read or that we consider this passage, we always wonder what we would do if we were in David's shoes. What would we have done? Would we have accepted saying, yes, we are that David who killed Goliath? Would any of us have said, yes, I am David, the king of the land? Or at least, yes, I am David, the king to be? Would we have said, yes, you are right, I am that David for whom women were singing to one another, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s? Certainly not. Certainly, none of us fleeing death from Saul would have accepted to face death by the hands of the Philistines. Because accepting that we are that David meant for us to be captured, probably to be tortured, and most certainly to be put to death. You know, David was a persona non grata in the land of the Philistines. Certainly all the Philistines knew that David was chosen and anointed to be the future king of Israel. This is why they called him the king of the land. And so they knew that if he ever sat on the throne of Israel, he would mercilessly fight them and destroy them and seize their land. And knowing David's bravery and David's heroism, they were much more afraid of David than of Saul. Thus, seeing David helplessly arriving in the land was for them like a free gift falling down into their hands from heaven. They had a rare occasion to capture David, maybe torture him, and undoubtedly kill him. So David found no other way out than pretend madness. David cunningly pretended madness. But, you know, the fact that we might have done the same thing doesn't change the fact that what David did was wrong. It doesn't change the fact that what David did made him cunning. It doesn't change the fact that what David did made him a deceiver. And we all know that God is not cunning, but Satan is. We all know that God doesn't deceive anybody, but Satan does. Satan has been a deceiver from the beginning. Thus, whoever is a deceiver exalts Satan, not God. Yet, despite the fact that in this matter, David was found to be a deceiver, God still calls David a man after God's own heart. Let's now read 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 1 and 2. 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 1 and 2. David therefore departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. So when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became captain over them, and there were about 400 men with him. David eventually became a chief gangster. He became a rebel. He became an outlaw. David became the captain of outlaws. Something, of course, that is in opposition with the image of a man after God's own heart. So David became the head of all those who either couldn't or certainly wouldn't pay their debts. David became the head of all those who were discontented. David became the head of all those who would not accept the laws of the society in which they were living. David became the head of all those who wouldn't submit themselves to Saul's rule, David became the head of rebels. So, not only was David a liar and a deceiver, he also was an outlaw. Let's now read 2 Samuel chapter 11. Second Samuel chapter 11, verses 1 to 4. Second Samuel chapter 11, verses 1 to 4. It happened in the spring of the year, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. Then it happened one evening that David arose from his bed and walked on the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful to behold. So David sent and inquired about the woman, and someone said, "Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Then David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her, for she was cleansed from her impurity, and she returned to her house. This maybe is the most known wrongs of David the king, this case of adultery. So David appeared to be an adulterer. David, a man after God's own heart, committed adultery. And he committed that adultery with a married woman. So David defiled his own marital bed, and he also defiled the woman's marital bed. David, a man after God's own heart, actually was a lawful adulterer. And this was actually contemptible. David was a contemptible adulterer. Not only he did commit adultery, but he pushed a married woman to also commit adultery. That is very serious. But we are going to stop here today. We will continue with this same topic on this coming Monday, the 16th of November 2020. And God willing, that will be the last part of this topic, David, a man after God's own heart. Because what matters for us the most is to know why, despite all those wrongs of his, David was called a man after God's own heart, so that we too can do all to become men after God's own heart. This program, A Glance at the Word, is broadcast live every Monday and every Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. West Africa time, which is GMT +1. We also have live broadcast in French entitled École de Bexaler with Bishop Floribert Mawit every Tuesday and every Friday at 8 a.m. West Africa time, which is GMT +1. We have one other live broadcast program in French every Sunday at 8 a.m. West Africa time. It is entitled Le Pain de Champion, still with Bishop Floribert Mawit. And we have 2 weekly bilingual programs every Sunday. These are our Sunday services. They are broadcast live, respectively, at 10 a.m. and at 12 p.m. West Africa time, which is GMT +1. God bless you abundantly beyond all your expectations.